Two, and one. Looks like we're live. Welcome to Ignore the Machine. I'm Bradley J., champion of the unusual, and we have an unusually talented guy, unusually prolific man here, Greg Mitchell, author, so much more. But we're going to concentrate on this book, The Beginning of the End, How Hollywood and America Learned to Stop Worrying About the Bomb and Worrying and Love the Bomb. Thanks for being with us.
Very happy to be here. Thank you.
Now, when did you do this? Did it come out a while ago and it's now gaining attention because of the movie, or did it come out serendipitously along with the movie?
Well, it was published 2 years ago, and it's kind of had a long shelf life because of, I guess you'd say, rising interest in nuclear dangers since the Ukraine war. And of course, there are plenty of other nuclear threats and dangers in the world. So unfortunately, the issue has not gone away. And then, of course, the new Oppenheimer movie, there's been a long build-up to it. So I guess there's been a long build-up or return to my book also. I mean, that's good for my book, I guess. But we'll see how the movie plays with audiences out there.
So this is about the shocking and significant story of how the White House and Pentagon scuttled or attempted to scuttle an epic Hollywood production, and to set the scene soon after these bombs exploded over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, MGM, they wanted to make a movie about it. And I'm not sure what their point of view was. We'll find out. But there were attempts to prevent that, or at least dilute that. And that's what we're here about.
That's
so,
correct, yeah.
I guess pick it up from there.
Okay, well, just very briefly, after Hiroshima, Hollywood wanted to make a movie about the making and the use of the bomb, a drama, not a documentary. And two studios set out to do this. One was Paramount, and they hired Ayn Rand, of all people, to write the screenplay. The other was MGM, with Louis B. Mayer, the chief, who said this would be the most important movie they ever made. The original movie and scripts were inspired by the atomic scientists who had worked on the Manhattan Project, who were terrified about the future and didn't want the U.S. to build bigger bombs and more bombs. And the original scripts and inspiration was very much reflecting their message and their warning. But once MGM gave script approval to the Pentagon under Leslie Groves, General Groves, who really headed the Manhattan Project, and the White House, the Pentagon and White House totally turned the message around so that the movie turned out to be nothing but pro-bomb propaganda when it was released. And
it's interesting that Louis B. Mayer would put up with that. I mean, if the message is the complete opposite of the intended message, I'm surprised he would even go through with it.
Well, he wanted to make money, and I'm sure he even to this day, and I've written a lot about this in this book and others, 78 years later, it's still very difficult to take what you might call a critical view of, the making and use of the bomb, particularly, and then, building more weapons allegedly for our protection. So that certainly has been the official, what I call the Hiroshima narrative. And MGM found they didn't feel like combating that. Louis B. Mayer was super patriotic. He even changed the date of his birthday to July 4th, believe it or not. And so it was not really surprising that he caved. What was more surprising, and what I get at in my book, and again, the movie is The Beginning or the End, which is the same title as my book, was Oppenheimer himself caved. He had raised objections or was skeptical about this movie, and he eventually signed off on it. Actually, signed a release that allowed himself to be depicted and serve as narrator, even though he had read the script and found it, as he said, idiotic, and it was already in the process of becoming this pro-bomb propaganda. It had all sorts of falsehoods in it. And
wow.
That's a surprise, and that's a real tie-in to today. And of course, we don't see this in the new Christopher Nolan movie, but this was how Oppenheimer dealt with the first A-bomb movie, The Beginning or the End.
First, I didn't realize one could change the date of their birthday. Now that I know that's true, I may change the date of mine because it's a week before Christmas. And if I'd known this a long time ago, I would have changed it to June or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
And so
you're not Louis B. Mayer.
that's, I guess not. Who were some of the major players in the opposition, in the Pentagon, in the White House, in politics?
Well, the filmmakers gave, literally written script approval to General Leslie Groves, who was head of the Manhattan Project. He's featured in the new movie as played by Matt Damon. Excuse me. And I looked at the dozens of scripts and Groves' memos, lengthy memos. He literally made hundreds of changes in the script, some of them extremely minor. So that was bad enough. But then they sent the final, sent the final script and screening to the White House, and Truman himself then weighed in with script changes, and it required MGM to do a costly retake. And they also fired the actor playing him because Truman thought the actor, who was only viewed from the rear, lacked military bearing.
Interesting.
Whatever that is.
They should have gotten Sterling Hayden to do it.
Yeah, young. He would have been probably too young then. I'm not sure. But anyway, so it went that far. It went far. This movie went so far as to be, you might call it censored, I guess, certainly revised under orders from the White House, which is, I don't know if that's unprecedented, but it's pretty extreme. So I tell the whole story. Like I said, I saw every script, every memo from the White House, every memo from the
Interesting.
Pentagon.
So would the White House and the Pentagon be able to do that now?
Well, it's a good question. They do, various services weigh in. See, the problem, and this wasn't the main reason that this happened in 1946, but these movies, Hollywood big studio movies, that require some sort of military equipment, military cooperation. Right. They negotiate for that, and sometimes they have to kind of let's say give a little extra input from the military. We saw that the Zero Dark. You remember Zero Dark 30? Mm-hmm. Got a lot of criticism because they seemed to be working hand in hand with the CIA, but there are many movies that use military equipment and or need cooperation, and so they're kind of on a slippery slope here. So this beginning or the end movie, I don't think that was the principal reason for their sort of censorship, but it was possibly a factor.
Tell me about the research for this. Did you have trouble getting getting what you needed, permission-wise, or were there just mountains of things to go through? Was it difficult because of that?
Well, it all started. I was researching in the 1990s a book I would write with Robert J. Lifton called Hiroshima in America, which has really looked at the all of the post-war impacts of the bomb in America. I think it's quite a good book. And while I was doing that, I'd sort of heard about this MGM movie, but no one had really written much about it at all. It was almost unknown. And so I just sort of asked while I was at the Truman Library if they had any files on it. And sure enough, they produced a couple thick files. And, that really got me going. And then later I went to the Motion Picture Academy Library in LA, and they had, a giant number of materials on this film, which I don't think anyone had ever looked at from the evidence that I saw. So I spent a whole week there just going through the scripts and the letters and memos and so forth. So, and then there's other research as well, but it definitely was a hands-on, go back to the actual evidence of what transpired from 1945 and 1946, and it was pretty clear. I didn't really have to stretch to see the changes in the scripts as they went on. Some of them were handwritten in pencil, and they showed up in the final script.
Wow, we're speaking with Greg Mitchell, author of The Beginning or the End: How Hollywood and America Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Where can we see the film? Is it out there somewhere on demand somewhere? I'd love to see
it. Yeah, it's. I think it's streaming. It used to show up on TCM quite a bit, and it may still. I wouldn't be surprised if they show it around August 6th or the around the Hiroshima Day. But it's and there's a DVD. If anyone remembers what DVDs are, I have a DVD copy. So no, it's not. Like I said, it's little known, but it definitely exists out there that people can find if they want to.
So where did Oppenheimer himself stand on this, and did his position evolve?
Well, when he was first approached, he dithered as he is known for, um, and eventually they kind of wore him down. He said, "Okay, I'll look at the script. I'll meet with the producer." And when that happened, he sort of expressed a few problems he had with it, but privately he was telling his friends and associates. And again, I have sort of the letters. That the script was very bad. The characters were idiotic, as he said, um, and but he's. I don't. I mean, it's a little unclear why exactly, except that he was an egotist, no doubt about it, and he was going to be depicted in this drama, and he was going to be a narrator. But they needed his signature on a release to do that, and so they'd actually changed his name to Whittier in a script, thinking they might not get his okay. I can't imagine a more waspy name for an Oppenheimer.
No.
But so he eventually, signed, and then again told friends and associates that the movie's going to be bad. Um, but he went along. He did go along with it, and unfortunately, like I said, the film, so many falsehoods in the film. That it's really really unfortunate that and there's only until the Christopher Nolan Oppenheimer film there were only two other movies about this that have come from Hollywood in all these decades. So there have been plenty of movies about nuclear threat in general, including Dr. Strangelove, for example, but very little about the actual making and use of the bomb in 1945.
What were some of the inaccuracies that you referenced? A couple of two, three of the major ones.
I'm sorry, two or three of the major what?
Inaccuracies, things
Oh,
wrong
inaccuracies.
in the film.
Yeah, well, I mean, for one thing, they show that we, showered Hiroshima with warning leaflets before the bombing, which never happened. Um, they show the American fighter, the American B-29s in the mission being threatened by Japanese, planes in the distance, flak fired on them.
Didn't
That
happen.
never happened. Um, there's all kinds of statements in the film about, including Truman talking about they had no choice but to use the bomb, and it was going to be dropped on a military base, not a city, and so forth. And of course, this is not true. There were some very revealing things in scripts which ended up getting cut, fortunately. But actually, in some ways, I wish they were left in because they're so revealing. They had for some time in the script, they had the Japanese building their own atomic bomb or completing their own atomic bomb,
Really?
which would be threatening America. And get this, the lab was based in Hiroshima.
Oh,
So
man.
they had a scene with Nazi nuclear experts, arriving in Japan and turning over the secrets of the bomb. Um, they have a key. The one, and again, this is very, very revealing and shows the rewriting of the script. The script had you might say, one ethical Manhattan Project scientist who did raise some concerns about using the bomb. And he ends up near the end of the movie getting radiation poisoned when he's arming the Hiroshima bomb, and he dies. But he sends a letter to his wife before he dies, and the final scene in the movie finds that letter being read to her on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial as his ghostly presence uh, is behind her and begins to read it to her. And in this farewell letter, he says, "Actually, I was wrong. The future of nuclear is bright. It's going to, solve our problems and
Wow.
have faith. Nuclear is going to be our salvation.
So it
So
was kind of like the nuclear reefer madness.
yeah, I think if you watch the movie, I mean, a lot of people just will find it kind of dull. Others will kind of laugh at some of the special effects and the howlers in it. Oppenheimer is played by Hume Cronin, who some people may know, fine actor, but doesn't look anything like Oppenheimer. He's Canadian, for example, uh, and he's not a big, never was a big star. He was a well-respected actor, but and you have Hume Cronin kind of in narrating the movie. Um, but anyway, the new Oppenheimer movie is better. I still have some criticism of it, but certainly it's a step forward after 78 years.
Again, we're talking with Greg Mitchell. The beginning or the end, how Hollywood and America learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. How much of the act of dropping the bomb was directed at sending a message to the United States' other enemies, especially Stalin?
Yeah, that's been a charge now going back to Gar Alperovitz's classic work in the 1960s. And I've never embraced it fully. I think it's part of the story. I think people who just say it's a simple, the line that's often used is, that Hiroshima wasn't the last shot of World War II; it was the first shot of the Cold War, and that is true to some extent. And I don't throw cold water on that, but people who reduce it to simply warning to the Russians, I think it's a little too simplistic. But the fact is, and what is very important in the whole debate over the decision to drop the bomb, is that Russia did enter the war against Japan on 3 days after Hiroshima. And a lot of people, when they refer to this, they'll say, "Well, they're getting in on the kill." I've heard this my entire life. The Russians were just getting in on the kill, when in reality the U.S. had begged them to enter the war, and Stalin agreed to enter the war around August 12th. Uh, and we wanted them to enter the war because even after the testing of the bomb, and this is kind of a crucial bit of evidence that again nobody paid any attention to for decades. But Truman wrote in his diary when he learned from Stalin while he was at Potsdam. Stalin said he would enter the war as suggested. Truman wrote in his diary, "Finney Japs when that occurs." So Truman recognized that the Soviet entry in the war would provoke a Japanese surrender. You didn't know when exactly. The next day, and again, it's sort of I think the anniversary of this journal entry was yesterday. Truman again wrote in his diary that he says, paraphrasing, I think the Japanese will quit after we use the bomb. I used a code phrase for it, after we drop the bomb if it works. But I know they will when after the Soviets enter the war.
So Stalin already knew about it when we told him, or when we thought he was finding out. He already knew. He was unsurprised, and it was because there were spies in the Manhattan Project.
Right, that's right.
And
yeah, that's actually in the new Oppenheimer movie. As kind of a subplot, a minor subplot, is that this character of Klaus Fuchs is introduced in the movie at Los Alamos, and I think at the Trinity test, and we see him just in a couple scenes, but he's always referred to by name, so we know Klaus Fuchs. And then near the very end of the movie, Oppenheimer is told that guess what? He's now been revealed as a Soviet spy. So he does factor in the new movie a bit.
I might be fabricating this in my head, but it seems to me I remember that Oppenheimer himself wasn't fully trusted.
Yeah, well, he was.
And why was that?
Well, this makes for a great movie script. It's not in the beginning or the end. No one raises any questions about Oppenheimer, but in real life and in the Nolan movie, there's quite a bit of emphasis on the fact, and this is historically true, that Oppenheimer was kind of a fellow traveler in the 30s. He attended communist meetings. He didn't join the party, apparently. His brother was a card-carrying communist. So was his wife, and so was his girlfriend. Both his wife and girlfriend factor in the movie. Now, this was not unusual in the 1930s. There were many, many communist or fellow travelers in the 30s. And what's amazing is that General Groves, who was hardline conservative, knew about most of this when he hired Oppenheimer, and yet went ahead and hired him, despite what some might have said was he was a security risk. And of course, Oppenheimer did his job all too well, and it really was not that big an issue until the 1950s, when you had McCarthyism and the Red Scare, and then Oppenheimer was targeted as because of his past 1930s Red associations, and in fact he lost his security clearance and celebrated hearings in 1954. And again, this is really the focus of the new movie, last hour of the movie, but of course not mentioned at all in the first movie that I write about.
Well, thank you very much for being with us. You have to definitely pick up this book. It's The Beginning or the End, How Hollywood and America Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. One other book that interests me that I believe you wrote, I'm a Cold War, I don't want to say buff, but the tunnels.
The tunnels, right?
The tunnels, about the tunnels in Berlin, I guess, and how again a politician tried to squash the story of that somehow. JFK. Can you give me a background on that?
Another one of my recent books that is called The Tunnels. It was about the escape tunnels under the Berlin Wall that were dug by people in East Berlin, with the help of people in the West. And they dug these incredible tunnels under the wall, and many ended in disaster. Many were successful. The book is about one particular one in 1962, and the plot point you mentioned is that it was filmed by NBC. It became one of the most celebrated documentaries in the history of television when it was finally aired, but it looked for a long time like it would not be aired at all, because the Kennedy White House kind of pressured NBC, or took steps that it would not be shown. And so the book is really about both the digging of the tunnel, the whole mood of that period, the Cold War, but also the story of a big media company and the pressure it felt from the White House. So I guess it's kind of a theme in my recent work.
So folks, all my friends know that I love this stuff, and so I hang around with people who also love this stuff. So you're going to want to get at least both of these books, The Beginning or the End and The Tunnels, both by our guest, Greg Mitchell. Thanks so much for being with us. I really, really appreciate it. Interesting guy.
And thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And next time you have a book, let me know.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.